Time now for our PIX panel. Joining me this week, our political reporter Henry Rosoff, senior New York editor for Politico, Sally Goldenberg, and PIX 11 New Jersey reporter Jim Vasil. Great to have all three of you here.
Great to be here.
And there is a lot to talk about. And let's begin right now. Again, this is taping on Friday morning, so let's be very clear about that. But Mayor Eric Adams set to meet a little bit later with President-elect Donald Trump. And he's saying, you know what, I should be able to take whatever meeting I want with anybody because we've got to move the city forward. It was paid for by the city because he says it's about the city, so it's taxpayers' money, right? So, Henry, let me begin with you first. And what really is on the agenda?
Well, I'm sure they are going to be discussing city business, but let's examine that first before we get to this issue of a pardon and the mayor's legal troubles. I mean, let's talk about congestion pricing, which the president-elect has said is a priority. Well, the mayor hasn't expressed a strong opinion on that. Let's talk about deporting migrants, which the mayor has said he'd cooperate with him, but only to a certain extent. And we all know that former President Trump, soon to be president again, doesn't exactly stick to one topic or always stay on the script. So it strains credulity to believe that the issue of a pardon or even President-elect Trump intervening in the Justice Department case, which is absolutely on the table, wouldn't come up as a topic. Will we get a readout on that? Doubtful.
Yeah, I spoke to Justin Brennan, Sally, about this. He was talking about the budget when he was on the PIX 7 Morning News, and he said, well, I don't really know why he's going down there besides for being self-serving, because, again, to Henry's point, the president kind of flip-flops on so many different issues that it'd be hard to imagine a pardon wouldn't come up.
Yeah, you actually stole my exact phrase. It just totally strains credulity that this wouldn't come up, not only because the mayor is facing trial in April for a federal indictment, but because he and Trump both feel and have expressed publicly many times that the Biden Justice Department was, in their view, rigged against them because they're both critics of Biden. So at the very least, they would bemoan that together. But the idea that this wouldn't come up and that that's not part of his calculation for going down is not believable. And part of the reason I don't believe it is that he's running in a Democratic primary. Democrats in New York City voted for Kamala Harris 70-30. That was in a general election. So, I mean, I'm assuming it's the Democrats who voted for Kamala Harris. In a primary where you get the most high information voters who care the deepest, you're going to get people who are really put off by the fact that he has this relationship with Trump. He's taking an enormous political risk doing this. He would only do that as a relatively, talented and smart politician that he is. He would only do that for, it's a huge risk. He would do it for huge reward. The huge reward would be the pardon.
And it's worth stating the mayor's position when he's been asked about this numerous times, and he says, for what it's worth, I've done nothing wrong, and I am not going to directly seek a pardon myself, but my lawyer will do anything he can to advocate on my behalf.
Yeah, and there's that whole talk of whether or not he's actually going to run as a Republican if he were to lose the Democratic primary. He says repeatedly he's not going to, but you brought up the primary, so let's go there for a second, because there's this elephant in the room with a new poll out, two new polls out that show Andrew Cuomo far and away the leader with 30+%, then Scott Stringer, right? So I talked to Scott Stringer about this, and he was like, well, look, it's the Cuomo factor. Anybody who has the name recognition, of course, is going to be number one. We saw this with Andrew Yang, and then their negatives bring them down. But Cuomo, is he going to run is the question, Sally. Is February the month where he says, okay, I'm in it?
It seems that way, yeah. I think Cuomo was hesitating, and I don't know for sure, but I think Cuomo was hesitating because he didn't want to run against Eric Adams. They have very similar bases. It seems that Eric Adams is so badly politically wounded, and even more so if he's, buddy-buddy with Donald Trump at the moment, that all signs are pointing to yes. I mean, it's never yes until it's yes, but it does seem like Andrew Cuomo's running for mayor.
The field is bracing for this. You had Comptroller Brad Lander, who is definitely running, released a memo that barely mentioned the mayor and was all essentially counter opposition against the former governor. So the field is bracing for this. They're running against him, frankly, more than they are running against the current mayor.
Exactly right.
And when you look at the polls, I mean, again, it's early. It's very, very early, but those polls both have Eric Adams kind of down the list. It's not like he's the top two.
Well, really hasn't started running yet either. He doesn't have matching funds. He's got about $3 to $3.5 million in the bank. He hasn't dropped any money on paid media. He's waiting to see what happens with his legal case. So all the information anyone's getting from him are these terrible headlines. He's not putting, he's doing State of the City and so forth, but he's not putting ads out there. He's not really formed a campaign.
It's early. Let's talk about what's happening across the river, right, in our friend state of New Jersey, right?
Welcome, Jim.
Yes, Jim, I'm sorry. It was a great conversation. And, folks have a lot in New Jersey, have a lot to say about congestion pricing. That's a whole different ballgame.
Yes, it is.
But I want to talk to you about State of the State from Governor Phil Murphy right now, because the headline kind of came out about this ban on cell phones on school, and we're saying it's play out nationally. But how does the governor of New Jersey see this playing out?
Well, I think he and a lot of lawmakers want to see the Department of Education or somebody adopt a policy on this, right? And this means a lot to so many lawmakers on both sides of the aisle in Trenton, where I am pretty frequently. Now, I've talked to parents and students about this week. Mixed reviews. A lot of parents and kids think that these phones are a distraction. Mental health is obviously a priority among students. And then you have the parents who kind of want their kids to at least have their cell phone on them. They shouldn't be using it in school, right? They should be focused on their classwork. And that's where Murphy wants this ban to happen, is at K through 12 classrooms.
And now, but that would happen, and it would be system-wide across, because districts kind of do their own thing in New Jersey.
Right. This law, if it's passed, would require the Department of Education to adopt policies that, at a minimum, ban these phones in classrooms K through 12.
Okay. I want to talk to you also about the race for governor, because that is certainly heating up, and we have a lot of people on both sides running, right? So Phil Murphy is out. He's the lame duck. So who are some of the names that are really grabbing the attention this early on?
Well, there are just so many names. You bring up names. I mean, it's kind of, I almost don't want to name all the names, because we'd have to be fair and go through that long list. Right? There's a minimum of 5 on the Republican and Democrat side that really have a chance here. And you look at that, you think about when the voter steps into the booth, is a bead of sweat going to drip down their face, like saying whether they're Republican or Democrat? They're going to see a long list of candidates and say, man, you know, this is a tough choice here. I have so many choices.
And we can see that play out in New York as well, right? Because we have these names kind of floating. Richie Torres, whether or not he's going to throw his hat in to primary. Kathy Hochul, what do we think on that one?
I mean, it does seem, let's start with the Republican side, because it gets quite a bit easier, because I think when and if the congressman, Mr. Lawler, we were just speaking with, declares, I think the field might clear, maybe even more so than it cleared for Lee Zeldin, who had a bit of a primary challenge, but he always seemed like he was going to be the one. I think if Lawler jumps in, I don't think anyone else is really going to be very serious about
But on the
this.
Democratic side of things, if Richie Torres is doing this thing right now where he's blocking a lot of people, including the Hochul administration, so, I mean, he's not been no secret to him thinking about it. But now the way he's going about it, it just seems a bit odd that he's starting to block people on social media.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you never kind of want to let people know that things are getting under your skin.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, it's a while until Richie Torres has to make this decision. On the one hand, he's a very, very good fundraiser. He will have a lot of money. He's pretty popular among the people who like him. They really like him. On the other hand, it seems to me early on that he doesn't have a narrative exactly for why he's doing this, and he's not really like kind of winnowed his attacks on Hochul. They're just so vast. And I think to be an effective candidate, you have to have a rationale that's positive about yourself in addition to negative about the incumbent.
And what's interesting on all three that you said is it's early, right? It's going to be a long runway until we start covering all these
Let's
things.
keep talking about the mayor. I think that'll heat up.
Yeah, exactly. That's the one we got to
That's
focus
not
on
early.
now. Exactly, right? That's this year. Henry, Sally, Jim, great to have all three of you here, and we will be right back, everybody.